He had it all, billions in the bank, a luxury lifestyle, a reputation built on power. But then, in one ordinary cafe, a little girl whispered something over a simple plate of food, and it broke his heart. What happened next would tear down everything he thought he knew, and rebuild something far greater. You won't want to miss a single moment of this unforgettable story. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story, it's a deeply human journey about lost resilience and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances and the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now, let's begin. Alexander Bennett believed he had seen it all. At 45, the billionaire CEO of a global tech empire, Bennett Ventures, controlled more wealth than he had ever dreamed of growing up in Boston's foster care system. His life was built on precision, 5:00 a.m., workouts, market updates with espresso at 6:00 boardroom meetings scheduled down to the second. His penthouse in the Back Bay district stood like a steel fortress above the city where no stray feeling or memory dared intrude. But on a gray Thursday morning in late November, one glance, a single moment, would unravel everything. He wasn't supposed to be at the Cambridge Community Café. It wasn't on his schedule. A rare software glitch had forced him to delay a major presentation, and with an hour to kill, he walked aimlessly across the Charles River, cold wind biting through his coat. The café, a modest space near Harvard Square, with its fogged windows and faded chairs, offered unexpected refuge. He ordered black coffee. No sugar, no cream. No time for indulgence. Settling in a corner with his tablet, Alex immersed himself in global market forecasts. His gaze flicked between data points, net margins, and currency trends, until a soft, trembling voice reached his ears. "If I eat just a little, maybe there'll be enough left for Grandma." He froze. Looking up, Alex spotted a small girl at a distant table, maybe 8 years old, with long black hair tied in a fraying ribbon. Her coat was 2 sizes too big sleeves, hiding her small hands. Before her sat a small plate of oatmeal, plain, lukewarm, barely touched. She dipped her spoon, gently, eyes wide with concentration, as though rationing every bite mattered more than life itself. Alex's heart jolted in his chest. This wasn't a scene from an old charity ad. It was real, right here, now. He watched as the girl wrapped part of her oatmeal in a napkin, folding it carefully, eyes darting nervously. Her whisper echoed in his mind. "For Grandma." Why did that simple phrase feel like a punch to the gut? His tablet screen dimmed, markets forgotten. The girl's resilience, her quiet dignity, broke through years of emotional armor he had built brick by brick. Memories long buried clawed their way to the surface. Cold nights in a foster home, hunger gnawing, wondering where the next meal would come from. No one had saved him then. Without conscious thought, Alex rose and approached her table. "Hi there," he said softly. The girl looked up, startled eyes, wary yet intelligent. "Are you here alone?" The words felt absurd, but he needed to know. She nodded. "Grandma's sick. She couldn't come." Alex glanced at the empty chair beside her, the way her small fingers gripped the coin purse on the table. "What's your name?" he asked, lowering himself to her level. "Sophie," she replied after a moment, voice barely above a whisper. "Sophie Nguyen." "I'm Alex," he offered gently. "Would you mind if I sat here for a moment?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. The next minutes passed in a surreal haze. Alex learned that Sophie lived with her grandmother, Lynn Truong, in a small apartment not far from the cafe. Lynn had been ill for weeks. There was no money for medicine. Sophie had come alone to buy breakfast, carefully saving half to bring home. Alex's throat tightened. For all his billions, he had never encountered such quiet strength in such a small frame. I think we should get more food," he said, his voice rougher than usual, "for you both." Sophie's eyes searched his. "Grandma says not to trust strangers." "That's good advice," Alex replied honestly. "But maybe today we can make an exception. Just this once." The corners of her mouth twitched, as if deciding whether to trust this strange man. Finally, she whispered, "Okay." As they walked toward a nearby grocery store, Alex couldn't shake the weight pressing against his chest. How had he allowed himself to drift so far from human connection? When had the numbers begun replacing people in his life? At the checkout, as Sophie carefully chose bread soup and apples, Alex noticed she reached instinctively for the cheapest options. "Pick what you need," he encouraged. "Don't worry about the price." "But I have only $3, she replied, holding up her coin purse. Alex knelt beside her. "Today, you don't need to use that. Today, I've got you covered." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes, not just from relief, but from being seen. As they exited the store, arms full of groceries, Sophie paused under a patch of gray sky. "Thank you, Mr. Alex." In that moment, standing in the cold with a brave little girl who had taught him more about courage in an hour than any boardroom ever had, Alex Bennett understood a truth he'd ignored for too long. Money measures wealth, but only love measures worth. And deep inside, something shifted. A simple plate of oatmeal had shattered the routine of a millionaire, and nothing in Alex's world would ever be the same. As they approached Sophie's apartment, Alex's mind swirled with questions and a growing need to understand more. Who was Lynn Truong? How had Sophie learned such resilience? And why did Alex feel like this little family was about to change his life? He was about to find out. Alex Bennett had crossed many lines in his life between poverty and wealth, obscurity and fame, even between conscience and convenience. But following Sophie Nguyen across the chilly streets of Cambridge that morning felt different. This was not a business decision, nor a charitable gesture crafted for a headline. It was something deeper, a call he could no longer ignore. Sophie walked with quiet determination, a small bag of groceries swinging at her side, her thin figure dwarfed by the oversized coat. Alex trailed just a few steps behind an unspoken protector. The streets of Cambridgeport hummed with early morning life, cyclists zipped past on the bike lanes, professors hurried toward Harvard, and the scent of freshly baked bread drifted from corner cafes. Yet for Alex, the world had narrowed to one small girl, and the promise he'd made to see her home safely. "This way," Sophie said, pointing to a narrow street lined with aging brick apartments. Her voice was steady, but Alex noticed how often she glanced back as if unsure whether to trust his continued presence. He broke the silence gently. "Do you like it here, your neighborhood, I mean?" Sophie shrugged. "It's okay. We used to live in a nicer place when Grandma worked more. But now we're here." Alex's gut tightened. He had heard versions of this story before, families slipping through the cracks when illness or job loss struck. What made this one unbearable was the small voice telling it with such resignation. As they reached a worn building with a rusted iron gate, Sophie paused, her small hand gripping the handle. Grandma might not like surprises, she warned. "She gets tired easy now. Of course," Alex said, "I'll wait here if you want." But when Sophie unlocked the door and called softly, "Grandma, I brought food. And a friend," Alex couldn't remain outside. He followed her up the narrow stairwell, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't quite name. The apartment was small but immaculately clean. Sunlight filtered through faded curtains, illuminating a modest living room decorated with Sophie's crayon drawings and potted plants clinging stubbornly to life. On a threadbare couch sat Lynn Truong, frail and pale, her silver hair tied back loosely. The moment she looked up, Alex froze. Recognition hit him like a wave. She was older now, thinner, her face lined with illness and time. But those eyes, gentle, steady, familiar, he knew them. They had once watched over a frightened foster boy offering warmth when no one else had. Lynn Truong had been a young volunteer at one of Alex's earliest group homes. "Alex," she whispered, voice trembling with disbelief. The name sounded foreign in this space, more human than it had in any boardroom. "It's me," he replied softly. "I ran into Sophie. She reminded me of someone I used to know." Tears welled in Lynn's eyes, but before more could be said, a harsh cough seized her chest. Alex instinctively moved forward, steadying her as she struggled for breath. "We need to get you to a doctor," he urged. "No," Lynn gasped. "It's just a cold. Can't afford more visits." "Grandma says the hospital costs too much," Sophie added quietly, her small hand patting her grandmother's knee. Alex's world tilted. Here he was, a man whose watch cost more than their monthly rent, facing a woman who had once offered him kindness, now refusing care out of fear of debt. The injustice of it stung more than any corporate slight he'd ever endured. Without waiting for permission, he pulled out his phone. "We're going," he said firmly. "I'll cover it." No arguments. The ambulance ride was a blur. Alex sat beside Sophie, gripping her hand as Lynn was tended to by paramedics. In the sterile brightness of Massachusetts General Hospital, hours stretched long. Sophie leaned against Alex's exhaustion, overtaking her small frame, while he wrestled with a storm of emotion. A nurse approached. "She's stable, but very weak, likely untreated pneumonia. If she hadn't come in today—" The sentence trailed off. Alex exhaled sharply. A lesson etched itself deep. Sometimes stepping in wasn't charity, it was necessity. As evening fell, Lynn rested in a quiet room. Alex stood by her bedside, watching the rise and fall of each breath, memories flooding in of shared meals in that foster home, of Lynn's whispered stories to comfort him when the nights were long. He owed her more than he had ever admitted. Sophie curled on a chair beside him, fighting sleep. "Mr. Alex," she whispered, eyes heavy, "are you going to leave now?" The question pierced him. How many times had he asked the same of adults in his past, too often left behind? "No," he said, voice rough. "I'll be right here." She gave a small, weary smile and drifted off, her trust given so easily, so completely. Later, as he watched the city lights twinkle beyond the hospital window, Alex knew something irrevocable had changed. The line between observer and participant had vanished. He was no longer a bystander to this family's struggle. Whether he admitted it or not, he was now part of their story. One moment, one whispered phrase had broken through his carefully constructed life, and in its place something new, something terrifying and beautiful was beginning. Alex didn't know what came next, but he knew one thing: he wouldn't walk away again. In the days that followed Lynn's hospitalization, something unexpected began to happen. Alex Bennett, who was accustomed to orchestrating billion-dollar deals from the glass towers of the financial district, found himself spending quiet mornings in a modest hospital room, reading aloud to an 8-year-old girl whose world was no larger than the tiny apartment they called home. Lynn was recovering slowly but steadily. Antibiotics were working, though the doctors warned her body remained fragile. Sophie visited daily, her presence brightening the room in ways no medicine could, and Alex, despite a schedule that once had no room for spontaneity, cleared entire afternoons to be there. He brought books, storybooks, cookbooks, even children's versions of classic literature. One morning, after reading about a French market brimming with flowers and warm bread, Sophie sighed wistfully. Grandma used to make the best food, she whispered, before she got sick. She used to say cooking made her feel alive. Alex's heart clenched. He glanced at Lynn, whose eyes shimmered with both love and regret. Not any more, she murmured. Too weak now. And there's no place. Her words lingered with Alex. Later that evening, after seeing them home and tucking a sleepy Sophie into bed with promises of returning soon, he wandered through Harvard Square alone, mind racing. The storefronts flickered with life cafes, bookstores, flower shops. And then he sought a small shuttered café on a quiet side street. A handwritten sign read, "For lease." Through the dusty glass, Alex could just make out faded counters, an empty chalkboard menu, a kitchen waiting to be used again. An idea sparked. The next morning, armed with coffee and resolve, Alex visited Lynn and Sophie. They were seated together on the couch, Sophie sketching a picture of the hospital, and Lynn knitting slowly, her hands trembling only slightly now. "I saw a place," Alex began, voice tentative, an unusual feeling for him. "An old cafe for lease. It's close by, and I've been thinking, what if we brought it back together?" Lynn looked up sharply. "Alex, not charity," he said, quickly, reading her mind. "A partnership. I'd invest. You'd run it when you're well. Your recipes, your vision. We'd hire staff, of course, but it would be your space. A real business." Silence hung heavy between them. Sophie's eyes sparkled. "Grandma, you could cook again, and I could help." Lynn's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "Alex, I can't accept charity, not even from you." "This isn't charity," Alex said. "It's a sound investment and a way to give back to a woman who once gave me hope when I had none. I'll structure it properly. You'd have ownership say in everything. We'd draw up a real contract." Still, Lynn hesitated. Old wounds ran deep. Accepting help was not easy for someone who had fought to maintain dignity through poverty and illness. That evening, sensing the gravity of the decision, Alex called Caroline "Carrie" Martinez, his oldest friend, a sharp-minded attorney now practicing in San Francisco. She was one of the few people who knew his entire story. "Carrie," he began after a long pause, "I need your help, not for me, for someone I care about." He explained everything, the cafe, Lynn, Sophie, the offer. Carrie's voice was gentle but direct. "You mean, well, Alex, but tread carefully. You have power here. Make sure this isn't about your guilt or nostalgia. And for God's sake, give her full legal protection. No one should feel trapped." "I was hoping you'd say that," Alex replied. 2 days later, Carrie flew in, arriving with crisp legal documents and a knowing smile. Still the same Alex, she teased, saving the world one kitchen at a time. When they met with Lynn in her apartment, Carrie explained everything clearly, professionally. "You'd be a full partner," she said. "Ownership, profit share, legal protections. If this isn't what you want, there's no obligation. But Alex is serious. And so am I." Lynn listened quietly, fingers tracing the worn fabric of her armchair. Finally, with a trembling breath, she spoke. "I've spent years trying to stand on my own, and I don't want Sophie to see me only as someone who needs saving." "She won't," Alex said softly. "She'll see you as someone building something beautiful." Lynn's eyes filled with tears. "I'll think about it," she whispered. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Lynn invited Alex to stay for tea. In the small kitchen over mismatched mugs, she shared her fears. "I'm afraid of failing," she admitted, "of letting Sophie down, of taking too much from you." Alex shook his head. "You taught me something once. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite it. I want to honor that now." Lynn looked away, wiping her eyes. "You've changed, Alex." Maybe he replied, Or maybe this is the first time I'm becoming who I was meant to be. A week later, Lynn called. Her voice was steady, determined. "I've decided," she said. "Let's do it. But I want Sophie to see us sign the papers. I want her to know this is about trust and respect, not charity." Alex smiled. Agreed. The next afternoon, in a sunlit room at the Cambridge Community Center, Alex, Lynn, and Carrie signed the partnership documents with Sophie, watching solemnly from her seat, clutching a small stuffed elephant. When the final signature was penned, Sophie jumped up. "We're going to have a café," she beamed. Grandma's Café. Alex met Lynn's gaze. There were tears. There, yes, but also pride and something else, hope. As they left the room, Carrie pulled Alex aside. "This isn't just about them, you know," she said quietly. "You needed this too." He knew she was right. Outside, as they walked toward the shuttered cafe that would soon be theirs, Sophie skipped ahead, pointing out where she would place flowers, books, crayons. And behind her, two adults who had both known loss, both carried wounds too deep for words, took the first steps toward something neither had expected. A family. Unlikely, imperfect, but real. And in Alex's heart a new question was forming, one that would soon demand its own answer. The building smelled of dust and old dreams. The cafe, once bustling with life, now stood silent, a hollow shell waiting to be transformed. Light filtered through smudged windows, catching on a faded sign that still read, "Bloom Cafe." Fitting, Alex thought. It would bloom again, just as he hoped Lynn would, just as perhaps he might. Lynn stood in the center of the room, one hand resting lightly on a cane she now used since her illness. Her gaze traveled across the space with a mix of longing and apprehension. Sophie darted from corner to corner, her excited voice echoing in the emptiness. "This will be the book corner," Sophie declared, pointing to a cozy nook. "And that's where Grandma's pancakes will be on the menu board." Alex smiled, grateful for her energy, but his eyes remained on Lynn. She looked tired, thinner, her color not yet fully returned. The doctors had cleared her for light activity, but he still worried. "Are you sure about this?" he asked gently. She met his gaze with a strength that had not dimmed. "Alex, if I waited until I felt no fear, I'd never start anything. We build as we heal." Work began in earnest. Contractors came in to assess the plumbing and electrical systems. Lynn insisted on being involved in every decision, from the placement of the prep stations to the selection of tile for the backsplash. Alex deferred to her expertise but found himself marveling at how her confidence bloomed in this space. "I want this to feel like home," she told him one day as they reviewed paint samples. "Not another polished, impersonal place. People should walk in and feel warmth." He understood. Warmth had been missing from much of his life. Perhaps that was why he found himself drawn here more and more, leaving his office earlier, trading boardrooms for sawdust and paint fumes. Sophie became an unofficial project manager armed with a clipboard Alex had bought her. Each day after school, she'd come to the cafe inspecting progress with an earnestness that charmed even the gruffest of workers. But beneath the hopeful momentum, shadows lingered. One afternoon, as Alex arrived carrying bags of light fixtures Lynn had selected, he found her slumped in a chair, a hand pressed to her chest. Panic surged through him. "Lynn!" he cried, rushing to her side. "I'm fine," she gasped, though her pallor said otherwise. He didn't hesitate. "You're going to the hospital. Now." "No hospitals," she whispered. "I can't afford," I said. Now Alex insisted, voice firmer than she'd ever heard it. No more arguments. This time, she didn't fight him. At Massachusetts, general tests confirmed what Alex feared, a relapse of her pneumonia worsened by exhaustion. She would need rest, real rest, if she hoped to recover fully. In the dim light of the hospital room, Alex sat by her side, guilt gnawing at him. "This was my fault," he said softly. "I pushed too hard." "No," Lynn replied, her voice thin but resolute. "I wanted this. I needed it, but maybe I forgot that healing takes time." A tear slipped down Alex's cheek, surprising him. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Sophie can't lose you." "You won't," she said, reaching for his hand. "But you have to promise me when I can't be here, you'll keep building." For her, he promised. In the days that followed, Alex became more than an investor. He was there when the new ovens arrived, when the plumbing was finally repaired. He helped repaint the dining room in warm creams and soft blues, the colors Lynn had chosen after long deliberation. Sophie called him Mr. Bossman now, her way of teasing him as he coordinated deliveries. But even as the walls brightened, tension crept in. One crisp morning, as Alex and the contractors reviewed flooring options, Sophie failed to appear after school. Hours passed. Panic set in. Calls to her school revealed she'd left as usual. Frantic Alex and Carrie, who had stayed on to assist with legal filings, scoured the neighborhood. Finally, a call came. A local shopkeeper had found Sophie near Charles River Basin, alone, clutching her backpack, tears streaming down her face. When Alex reached her, he knelt, pulling her trembling form into his arms. I was trying to find the duck pond," she sobbed. "I wanted to get a feather for Grandma, to help her feel better." His throat closed. "Sweetheart, you can't wander alone like that. I just wanted to help," she whispered. Alex held her tighter. In that moment, the carefully guarded walls around his heart crumbled completely. He wasn't just a protector anymore, he was family, and that terrified him as much as it comforted him. Back at the hospital, Lynn wept when she heard. "I should have been there." Alex shook his head. "You can't do everything alone anymore. We're in this together." Later that night, as Sophie slept in a chair by Lynn's bedside, Alex sat with Carrie in the hospital corridor. "You're falling in love with them," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "But you need to be sure," she continued. "This isn't a project to fix. This is life. Messy, unpredictable. Are you ready for that?" Alex looked through the window at Sophie's sleeping face, at Lynn's frail figure. "I think I finally am." The next morning, Lynn was discharged with strict orders to rest. The cafe renovations would continue without her direct involvement for now, though she remained involved through video calls and daily updates. When Alex suggested hiring additional help, Lynn agreed on one condition. They must understand this place is about more than food. It's about heart. And so the team grew. Local chef Marco Alvarez joined as sous chef, bringing warmth and humor. A young designer from Harvard volunteered to create a logo inspired by Sophie's drawings. The community rallied, eager to see the space reborn. As opening day approached, Lynn grew stronger, her spirit buoyed by the progress. One evening, as Alex reviewed final menus at the apartment, she surprised him. "There's something you should see." From a battered box, she pulled out photographs, children from the foster home where they'd first met. Among them, a younger Alex, eyes wary, arms crossed. "You were always determined," she said, smiling, "but you had such a kind heart. I see it again now." He traced the photo, emotion welling. "I lost that part of me for a while." She reached for his hand. "Now you've found it. Don't let it go." The lesson was clear. Building walls protects no one. Only by breaking them could life truly be lived. As the final paint dried and the sign was hung, Bloom Café in elegant script, Alex stood with Sophie and Lynn beneath the morning sun. "It's beautiful," Sophie whispered. "Just like Grandma dreamed." Alex looked at them both, heart full, and deep inside he knew the most important transformation had already begun. The morning air was crisp and bright the day Bloom Café opened its doors. A line of neighbors and curious passers-by stretched down the block, their breath forming little clouds in the cool autumn air. Inside, the café glowed with warmth, soft light bouncing off cream-colored walls, the gentle scent of baked goods mingling with fresh flowers on each table. At the heart of it all stood Lynn, her eyes shimmering with equal parts joy and disbelief, and beside her Alex and Sophie, beaming with pride. The soft opening had been Lynn's idea. Let it grow naturally, she'd said, like a garden, one day at a time. And so they had invited the community families from Sophie's school, workers from nearby shops, old friends who'd supported Lynn through her hardest days. Marco bustled in the kitchen, a rhythm of clinking pans and cheerful orders. Carrie flew in from San Francisco, insisting on attending the opening day. Even Alex's staff from Bennett Ventures arrived, trading tailored suits for casual smiles as they crowded into the cozy space. Sophie darted between tables, proudly introducing herself as the junior manager. At one point, she tugged on Alex's sleeve. "Mr. Alex, come see. Grandma's pancakes are on the menu board." Sure enough, scrawled in bright chalk, Lynn's special elephant pancakes, just as Sophie had drawn them. It was a perfect moment. But as Alex reached for his phone to capture it, a message came through that sent a chill down his spine. Diana Kim Sophie's birth mother was back in Boston, and she wanted to meet her daughter. The news hit Alex harder than he expected. He had known this possibility loomed. Carrie had kept him informed quietly, Diana's legal history, her progress in therapy, her genuine attempts to rebuild her life. But knowing and feeling were two very different things. Later that afternoon, Alex broke the news to Lynn over a quiet cup of tea in the cafe's back room. "She's reached out," he said gently. "She wants to meet Sophie." Lynn's hands trembled around her mug. I always knew this day would come. But what if she takes her? She can't," Alex reassured her. "Not without your consent. And Sophie's voice matters too." Tears filled Lynn's eyes. "I don't want to lose her, Alex. She's all I have." "You're not alone anymore," he said, covering her hand with his. "We'll face this together." When they told Sophie that evening, they kept the conversation simple. "Your mom wants to see you," Lynn said softly. "She's been trying very hard to become a better person." Sophie looked thoughtful. "Will she take me away?" "No," Alex promised. "No one will make you do anything you don't want. You get to choose." Sophie pondered for a moment. Then she looked at Lynn. "Can you come too?" Lynn smiled through tears. "Of course." The meeting was set for the following Saturday at Bloom Café Neutral Ground, a place where Sophie felt safe. When the day arrived, the cafe buzzed with quiet tension. Alex paced behind the counter, Lynn arranged fresh flowers with trembling fingers, and Sophie clutched her stuffed elephant eyes wide but steady. Diana arrived just after noon. She was younger than Alex expected, her face lined not by age, but by the weight of regret. She carried a small gift and a heart full of hope. The reunion was cautious at first, Diana kneeling to Sophie's level, her voice breaking as she whispered, "I've missed you so much." Sophie studied her mother's face for a long moment. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she reached out and hugged her tightly. For Alex, watching from a respectful distance, the sight was both heart-wrenching and healing. Over the next few weeks, a delicate balance was struck. Diana visited often, always with Lynn or Alex present. Trust grew slowly with patience and care. One chilly evening, as Alex walked Sophie home from the cafe, she slipped her hand into his. "Mr. Alex," she said quietly, "do you get lonely in your big house?" He hesitated. "Sometimes." "You could live closer," she suggested matter-of-factly. "Then we'd all be near each other." Alex laughed softly, heart swelling. "You know what? That's not a bad idea." And so, a few weeks later, he surprised them both. One crisp December afternoon, after closing the cafe early for the holidays, Alex led Lynn and Sophie down a quiet street near the river. Outside a charming brownstone with a small garden, he paused. "I bought this," he said simply. "I want it to be our forever home, for all of us." Lynn covered her mouth, tears streaming. "Alex, are you sure?" He smiled. "More sure than I've ever been." Sophie squealed with delight, running to hug him. "Now you'll never be lonely again." That evening, as snow began to fall, they gathered in the warmth of Bloom Café. The tables were filled with neighbors sharing stories and laughter, the aroma of cinnamon and fresh bread wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. At one point, Sophie stood on a chair and made a solemn announcement. "This is the best family ever," she declared. "Because we chose each other." And in that moment, as Alex looked around at the unlikely family he'd found, Lynn, Sophie, Diana, Carey, and the vibrant community that had grown around them, he realized something he had spent a lifetime chasing. Home wasn't a place. It was love. And sometimes all it took was one small voice, a plate of food, and the courage to listen. In the heart of Boston, amidst towering glass buildings and endless pursuits of profit, a life changed forever not through a $1 million deal or a cutting-edge invention, but through a single whispered sentence over a simple plate of oatmeal. Alex Bennett, a billionaire CEO accustomed to living behind polished walls of success, stumbled upon Sophie Nguyen, a brave 8-year-old girl carrying more courage and compassion than many adults twice her age. That single encounter unraveled a life he thought was complete. As he followed Sophie into her modest world, Alex confronted the reality of human struggle and resilience. Lynn Truong, Sophie's grandmother, embodied dignity, despite hardship, warmth, despite illness. Their connection wasn't built overnight, but through small acts of trust, meals shared, hands held, promises made and kept. Through a spontaneous decision to offer help, Alex began a journey that no algorithm or market forecast could have predicted. What began as a gesture of kindness blossomed into a bond that redefined family. The transformation of Bloom Café mirrored their emotional rebuilding, faded walls painted anew, empty spaces filled with life and laughter. In choosing to step beyond his comfort zone, Alex found not only a renewed purpose, but also the belonging he had long denied himself. The unexpected return of Sophie's mother, Diana Kim, tested the fragile new family, forcing each of them to confront fears and extend forgiveness. Rather than tearing them apart, this challenge strengthened their unity, teaching them the power of compassion and second chances. It wasn't easy. Emotions ran deep, wounds reopened, but through patience and openness, they carved out space for healing. In the end, Alex's most valuable investment wasn't in property or stocks, but in the relationships he nurtured. By choosing love over fear, vulnerability over pride, he built a forever home, not just of bricks and mortar, but of trust, empathy, and shared dreams. And therein lies the heart of this story, a timeless lesson we can all carry forward. The walls we build to protect ourselves can just as easily imprison us. True strength lies in breaking them down to connect with others. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to become consumed by personal ambition, isolating ourselves behind screens and status. But no accolade can replace the warmth of a child's trust, the comfort of a friend's hand, or the quiet joy of belonging. Kindness doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with the simple act, listening, reaching out, choosing to see the humanity in one another. When we approach life with patience, compassion, and humility, we not only enrich the lives of those around us, but also transform our own. It's not weakness to care deeply. It's a courageous choice in a world that too often rewards indifference. So, as you move through your own busy days, remember Alex's journey. Pay attention to the small moments, the chance to extend kindness, to forgive, to build bridges where walls once stood. You never know whose life you might change, or how that person might change yours. Thank you for watching this story with us. If it touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this video. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Stories that remind us of the incredible power of love, resilience, and community. Until next time, take care and keep spreading kindness.